heard and felt the pop and the snap, and I went to ground. My second ever ACL injury. He came straight over me and said, "Are you all right, mate?" There and then I knew, shit, it's ACL. This is going to be in stark contrast to my previous ACL injury, and it's something that I'm going to go through today. It's what not to do when you've suffered an injury, or an ACL injury specifically, and what I did. Not what you should be doing, but what I did to get to the level that I'm at now. Hello and welcome to another episode of the PD Performance Podcast. A new setting again for you guys today. It seems like every time I record I'm in a new setting, but I am back in Tala today, of all places. Most of you will know that I spent many years here working in the GA with Thomas Davis GA Club, so it's nice to be back. Some of you listening to this will not know, but I am back in Ireland. Some of you may not know why I'm back in Ireland, but I was unfortunate to suffer an ACL injury out in Australia. My second ever ACL injury, this time to the opposite side, so my right leg this time. And as a result, I've had to commit to coming home to Ireland to get operated on by some of the world's best surgeons and to get stuck into my rehab. So you'll hear by voice that I'm pretty positive about the whole thing, and that's one thing that has been commended by a lot of people that have been following my journey. So I thought today I would take you through the story of what happened, how after 3.5 weeks now, I am back to driving the car and functioning as normal, completely as normal, and what the recovery process is going to look like for me, as well as the surgery. And yeah, it's pretty much what I do. I deal with ACL rehabs on a daily basis with many, many athletes. So I had a conversation yesterday with another S&C coach from Ross Gray, and he said, "Geez, fair play to you. I see all the work that you're doing and you're putting into your knee and getting it right." And I said, well, considering I know what I should be doing, wouldn't I be an awful idiot to not be doing it? So I've got completely stuck into it. I'm actually enjoying the process of the rehabilitation, and that's one thing that I think is missed. So first of all, let's get into the injury itself. I was playing OzTag, which is a form of tag rugby / rugby league that they play in Australia, playing on a pretty competitive team. We had a number of former professionals on the team, and I think it was round 3. We were playing in rain, and it was quite damp. We were winning the game, and I was kind of covering a full back role in defense, because obviously you can kick in tag rugby, you can grubber it through, and because it's kind of a rugby league hybrid, you have to get back 10. And as a result of that, on your final play of the game, as well as your fourth tackle of the game or fourth tag of the game, the opposition are allowed to kick. So I was covering a full back role in defense. Ball came through. I had been cleaning up well all game, and I collected the ball. I heard a call from my right saying to just take it up. And out of the corner of my eye, this is probably in my nature as a former rugby player, I saw that the defense that were coming at me were staggered. Now, this is going to be a little bit of detail. If you have played rugby or you play rugby, maybe in one of the decision-making positions, you'll understand what I'm talking about. So one defender, who was the furthest defender to my left, was behind the defender that was to his left, so to the right of that defender. The guy that was closest to me, so in front, was coming quite hard at me, so he was coming with a lot of acceleration. Now, if you follow a lot of my content, you'll know that if a defender is coming at you at pace, it is really, really easy to use that defender's momentum against them. So I thought, and I still think I was right, that the picture in front of my face showed that if I could put a right foot sidestep in on that initial defender, then the defender behind him was too far back that if I took that space, I'd be able to accelerate free and through the line. So my right foot sidestep, if you've played rugby with me or have seen me play rugby, is probably my biggest asset. So I then came in at an angle. Now, again, this is detailed, and this is kind of some of the stuff I go through in my game speed coaching sessions with athletes. I came in at an angle in order to lead that defender astray, so to lead him to continue to accelerate towards me because he thinks I'm going to the right. After he accelerated towards me, I put in a big jump hop step on my right side and planted my foot outside of my center of mass. When I did that, I was in a deep low position because I wanted to be close to the ground in order to project and push myself back to the inside. And when I did that, my trunk probably flexed a little bit too much and I lost control, as well as that my knee moved into a valgus position. So that's where the tibia translates anteriorly, so forward, as well as the femur popping in. And because of my low position, I was actually looking at my knee and I saw my knee buckle and I heard and felt the pop and the snap and I went to ground. And the guy that was on me, that I was trying to beat, he came straight over me. He said, "Are you all right, mate?" And I said, "No, I'm after tearing my ACL." And he said, "What?" Because I wasn't really in that much pain. I was just on the floor. Now, my previous ACL injury was on the left-hand side, and that was a contact injury playing rugby as well. Similarly, I was playing full back at the time. The ball came back to me and I ran a ball that I potentially shouldn't have. I should have kicked it. But that time I got tackled by two guys with my leg planted and it buckled, and I've never felt pain like that before. But this time I just knew from the mechanism of injury that it was more than likely ACL. So I got up, played the ball through my legs and hopped off, and the lad said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "No, I think my ACL is gone." So I sat on the sideline. There was only 3 more minutes left in the game, and I waited for the game to finish, and then I hopped over to, I got helped over to the bench because we were playing in a park, and the lads were asking me, "What do you reckon?" I was like, "I think it's gone." Now, I had almost full movement in it. I had full flexion, but I didn't have full extension, and I couldn't really put my heel down on the floor without experiencing a little bit of pain. So I knew that that was kind of warning signs, as well as the mechanism of injury, that it was potentially ACL. The lads were saying to me, "Well, it's probably not, like you're not in that much pain," but I kind of in the back of my head knew. There and then I knew, shit, it's ACL, I'm going to have to go back to Ireland for surgery. So that was probably the only time that I felt negatively around it. That time when I was sitting on the bench. And this is going to be in stark contrast to my previous ACL injury, and it's something that I'm going to go through today. It's what not to do when you've suffered an injury, or an ACL injury specifically, and what I did. Not what you should be doing, but what I did to get to the level that I'm at now. I sat there, I kind of said, "Look, I'm going to have to go back to Ireland." The lads were a bit kind of on edge because they were like, "Well, maybe not." They were trying to cheer me up, etc. I got carried off into a car to get dropped home. Quite funny, actually. So it was 3 former pros that were with me when they were carrying me off. One was a centre, one was a winger, and one was a scrum half. So the scrum half, Jack Stafford, would be a good mate of mine, and he decided that he would say to me, "I'll give you a hand, Pete, don't worry." So he was on my left, and then Alex McHenry's, who's a centre, and I'd say about 6'2", 6'3", was on my right. Jack is a scrum half, so he's not that height. And after a little while, I had to ask Jack to swap out for Callum, who's the winger, who was also over 6 foot, because I was kind of not being carried as best as I could, with one left side a lot lower than my right side. So that probably hit Jack's ego a little bit, but I appreciate the effort all the same. So the lads put me in the car, went home, got something to eat, and pretty much decided then and there that I was just going to make the best of what some could perceive as a negative situation. So there's going to be a positive to absolutely every negative. So I went up to the lads' house, I sat there, got something to eat with them. I think we watched something on the TV, and I just kind of rested leg, put it up, elevated it, and then put in motion what I was going to do in the coming days. So tried to organize scans and whatnot. The very next day then, it was a Friday. I couldn't get in for the scan, so I booked in the scan for the Monday, which was great. In Australia, like, you can get in for a scan quite quickly. And then I just cracked on with work and tried to do as much as I possibly could, so live as normal a life as I possibly could. I got a pair of crutches, so I was fine to get around. And then the next couple of evenings, I just chilled with the lads in their house. But I also, on day dot, the next day, started to try to get some movement into my limb. So I started to work on some contraction of the quad, which was really, really hard initially. I started to work on some banded plantar flexion and dorsiflexion. So that's your ankle, just pointing the toe. And when you plantar flex at the ankle, by virtue of that, you're naturally going to get a little bit more extension at the knee joint. And then I tried to get a little bit of flexion into the joint as well. So that would be termed kind of flossing the joint. And I think I did that 3 to 4 times daily for maybe 2 to 3 sets of about 10 reps of each. And gradually, I started to see small changes in range of motion from doing that so frequently, as well as just chilling out, trying to eat as well as I possibly could and not feel sorry for myself, be as positive as I possibly could. As a result of doing that, I think I got back to some level of function quite quickly. And I also prioritized not taking any medication. I just said, look, I'm after probably tearing my ACL, maybe injuring some other structures in there as well. I'm just going to let the body do its thing and go through the natural healing process. Because any swelling that I delay now is probably going to prolong the swelling and the inflammation process long term. So in the couple of days post acute injury, I just said, okay, let's just allow it to be sore, allow it to be big and puffy, and allow it to try to heal itself. So that's exactly what I did. And then after 3 days probably, I started trying to load onto that limb a little bit more. So not fully load onto it, but just try and get my foot on the floor and feel my weight over it, probably still leaning a little bit on my unaffected side, my left side. And just do that 8 to 10 times, a few times a day. And I could react to my body and how it was feeling and react to my knee. And if I was pushing too far, my body would tell me because it would be sore. And I think previously what I did with my ACL injury, the previous one, was I felt incredibly sorry for myself. I sat on the couch. I ate food that probably wasn't the best food to be eaten. So high sugar, not very nutritious in terms of micronutrient density and a high volume of it, and then didn't move that much. And then I also allowed my emotions to get on top of me a little bit. I didn't try to not control my emotions, but reframe how I assess the situation. I didn't try to see any positives in the situation. I just kind of sat there and wallowed a little bit in self-pity. And that didn't help me at all. And sometimes you need to do that for a little while. But like, as I've spoke about in the podcast before, you're going to go through the stages of grief post any injury. But I felt like I stayed in that depression phase of grief, of the grief response, for way too long the last time. So I probably only stayed in that phase for that amount of time that I was sitting on the park bench after the initial injury. And then after that, I said, look, I'm just going to act as best as I can and do what I know I should be doing, and then try to see the positives in it. So look, from a negative point of view, I'd have to leave my friends in Australia. I wasn't going to get to go in with all of the AFL teams that I potentially could have got in with for the preseason. I wasn't going to get to work with some of the pro athletes out in Australia that I had been chatting about doing some preseason with them. I wasn't going to be able to play rugby anymore. I wasn't going to be able to demonstrate as well in my in-person sessions. But on the other side, I was going to get to come home to see my family for the Christmas period. What better time to come home? I was going to get to try my new found approach to ACL rehab and see if I can rehab this injury to a better level and more quickly than my previous one, where I went with the more traditional approach. I was going to get to improve my verbal communication skills in terms of my coaching process. So now I can't demo. I've got to be clearer in how I communicate with my athletes. I was going to get to connect with some very good S&C coaches, and I was going to get to bring all of you guys some really good insights and content into an ACL rehabilitation and how I would do it. So what better opportunity to showcase to you guys that I know what I'm doing and that I'm able to rehab these injuries to quite a high level and go into incredible detail with them than actually go through it myself. I remember a professional athlete that I know quite well, he had a meniscus injury, I think, or an MCL sprain this time last year, I'd say it was. And he told me, and I said, good, that's great. Like, you're going to be able to rehab that in front of everybody and show the level of adversity that you're able to tolerate and come back from. And you're going to get some great growth and engagement and probably some new business as a result of that. So, like, it wouldn't be very good of me to not use that exact same mental reset for myself if I was suggesting other people use it. That's how I tried to reframe it. And then I just got cracking on it and got to work on it. Why do ACL injuries happen? I've been asked this on my Q&As, and we don't know, like injury just happens. It does just happen. Look, we know that if you injure one ACL and have reconstruction on one limb, the other limb becomes more at risk as a result. I would say my right limb is a bit of a beast, and I would have been more worried about my left one, my previously injured one, if I was worried about it at all. But I thought I was at a very good level of function when I injured it this time. However, actually, I haven't gone into the scan. So the scan has come back on the Monday, and it said what I thought it was: an ACL, an MCL, which I contemplated, or which I kind of preempted, let's say. And then secondary, I had 2 tears in my meniscus. But the report from the specialist also said that they reckoned I had a partial tear in my ACL prior to this injury. And as well as that, I had a previous meniscus tear as well. So looking back, I think I know when that happened. I think it was just post-COVID when I was playing rugby, and I had like an inflammation of the joint and an injury from playing rugby as well, another right foot sidestep. But I just rehabbed it myself. I didn't go for a scan or anything because the physio I was working with at the time said it was probably just a meniscus tear, and I didn't want to go a surgical route, and my function wasn't too bad, so I just rehabbed it. So I sent my report to a couple of really good specialists, probably world's best in terms of rehab. And they said, yeah, look, because of that partial tear, it probably was just going to happen anyway. So if it was going to happen anyway, what better time for it to happen than before I go home for Christmas? So now I can get the surgery pre-Christmas, which I'm really grateful for because of my connections in Santry in the sports surgery clinic. So thank you to everybody in there that has helped me. Tommy Mooney gets a shout out, Sammy Dowling, as well as Ray Moran, who's going to do the surgery. I'll be off my feet for a couple of weeks and then hopefully back on my feet for the new year. So that's what recovery looks like. However, if you're following my stories, you'll see that in the last, so I'm 3.5 weeks post now, but since I came back, I have not taken any backward step. I've been smashing my quads. I have been smashing the surrounding tissues. And that's something that I did in Australia as well in the weeks post too. I got back cycling after probably 4 days, I think. And I was cycling almost daily at that point. I started loading my lateral hip, so my glute med, and trying to hinge as effectively as I could to get some load and length into my posterior chain. Quite soon, I started doing quite a lot of hip hitching. I started doing some foot mobility and quite a lot of calf isometrics and calf work as well. And then the same flexion, extension, flossing of the joint on the daily as well down there, as well as trying to load into that side and try to get more competent at getting a little bit more flexion into the joint. And I was pretty successful in doing that. I've got full extension back now. I've got full flexion as well. And I think it's because I put that approach into practice quite early and I didn't sit around feeling sorry for myself. Look, your emotions play a role in your hormones. We all know that. And your hormones play a role in the recovery process. So if you can try to be as positive as possible, it's going to benefit how your body responds. And if you speak to yourself and have positive self-talk as well, then you're going to have more self-efficacy and more confidence in what you're doing. And you're going to focus on the things that you can do over the things that you can't do. And if you do that and you just do what you can do every single day, and what you can do increases in terms of the demand every single day, it's very, very likely that you're going to get good returns in those early stages of rehab. And I was just in Santry today actually doing a little bit of shadowing with my mate, Sammy Dowling, who's working extensively with ACL cases there. And we were just talking about how the first 2 to 3 weeks, post-injury as well as post-surgery, are crucial in that if you get those first few weeks right, they're going to lead to shorter return times down the line. There's no point in not doing the stuff that you know you should be doing. If you don't know what you should be doing, then you should be reaching out to people and trying to get guided through what you should be doing. And then you're going to lead to, you're hopefully going to get back doing what you love far earlier than you would should you or would you do the alternative, which is not do the things that you should be doing. So as a result of doing all that stuff, as well as trying to get as much upper body work and just general fitness work done that I could, I haven't fallen into a state of poor, say, health. And as a result of that, my recovery is going to be better and my time to recovery is going to be better. So that's what I have been doing. Post-surgery, I am aware that for 1 to 2 weeks, I'm probably going to be at a lower level of function, because obviously your body's going to respond to being cut open and operated on in quite, I don't want to say negative, but there's going to be a bit of inflammation as a result of that. Your body's not going to respond to that positively necessarily. So my focus is on getting back walking and getting back to activities of daily living as soon as my body can tolerate, but as hopefully sooner than I did last time. And by nailing all of the things that I can nail right now and increasing the strength of my quads, my hamstrings, all of the surrounding tissues, calf, etc., then I'm going to hopefully make that transition back to wellness and back to health post-surgery much quicker. So I'm doing this stuff now partially to make it shorter, or make the time frame that I return to normal life post-surgery shorter, but also I think it's useful for post that and into my long-term health. I don't want this to happen again. Post-surgery then, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try a more speed-based approach to rehab. Now, that doesn't mean speed in terms of time frame to return to sport, although that generally happens as a result, but it means I'm going to bias more reactive and higher velocity activities, or at least prepping for them earlier in the rehab process than I did last time. Last time I went with a very traditional, okay, function, range of motion, okay, strength, okay, now we're back running, okay, now we're back doing, well, plyos is probably before running, back from running, trying to increase the speed for more linear speed, then into some change of direction stuff, and conditioning is more of a focus point there than anything else. As a result of that, I had kind of lingering patellar pain, and I wasn't moving very well in terms of my running change of direction for years afterwards. This time I'm going to start putting in more isometrics. I'm going to start putting in more postures and positions that are relevant to the postures and positions of running and change of direction early. And I'm going to try to nail those pre-injury or pre-surgery as well, so that my body doesn't lose those qualities as quickly. Because with the traditional approach, you're hammering strength for like 6 months, sometimes maybe longer in some cases. And as a result of that, you lose that stiffness and reactive strength, and then you have to regain it. Whereas if you never lose it, or you don't lose as much of it, then it's going to be a lot easier and a lot simpler to get it back to a sufficient level. And I'm also going to use this opportunity to try to come back a better athlete than I went in to this injury with. So I'm probably going to reach out, because my previous ACL, I got a little bit of help from physios initially, but then I kind of ran it myself. And I spoke with my friend Alan Murdoch about this, because I was saying to him I might actually just go with him for the ACL rehab and return to play process, because it would be useful to get an external perspective as well as to get some more insights into how he would program for this specific rehab and return to play. And he said, look, there's 2 options. You can either do it with myself and my team and you'd come back faster than you would with anybody else. He's confident of that. But knowing you, he said, the alternative is you go through it yourself, and you'll probably learn more from doing that, from trial and error, than you would from just doing it with me. Now, given that I did the last one myself, and given that I've done all of his courses and menteed under him, or studied under him for a year or so, I think that I probably would learn a bit from going through the rehab and return to play process myself. I am doing it myself at the moment, but I think that I want to try to really accelerate it. And I think one thing when programming for yourself is it's very hard to ignore your biases and not get your ego involved. And I think I need that external perspective and that external feedback. Not that I need it, but I think I would benefit from getting it rather than simply going it alone. And if I'm asking people to sign on to work with me, for me to give them external feedback to help them, because a coach is a guide that accelerates your process to getting back to wellness and recovery earlier, then I think I should practice what I preach a little bit and go to somebody that's going to help me to do that. And given that I'm very familiar with Alan's work, I think he's the right person to do that. So I'm going to go and probably work with him if he wants to work with me. He might want to give away too much to me because I'm working with similar athletes. So that's pretty much what it looks like. And I would say to anybody that's undergone the ACL injury or is undergoing the process, you don't have to have the same perspective as me. This is my perspective. This is what's been working for me so far. If it's your first one and your first injury, there is a trauma response to it. It's perfectly natural to feel like shit, feel like you're not making enough progress, that you're banging your head against the wall, that this shouldn't have happened to you and that it's not fair. That's perfectly fine. But after you've sat with that for long enough, then you need to start moving into action, and you need to start to do what's best for you. And if you don't know what's best for you and you need help starting to act, then you need to reach out to people for conversations. They can be experts, they can be friends, they can be the people around you, but don't just bottle it up and hold it in. Do something about it, basically, is what I'm trying to say. And if doing something about it is just simply reaching out to a friend and having a conversation, then that's going to be better than doing nothing at all. So don't do what I did last time. Sit on your hole, eating shite, having a really poor sleep schedule as well. I didn't mention that, but that's something I prioritized this time around, and didn't load it enough initially. So then my recovery process was way, way longer. Do not do what I did. I'm not saying do what I'm doing now, but just don't do what I did last time. So hopefully there's a few nuggets in there for you guys that are suffering from an ACL injury, but maybe suffering is the wrong word, who have experienced an ACL injury and are going through the rehabilitation process. If there is something in there that resonated with you, then please send it to a friend. If you need any help or even somebody to just talk to about this process, then please drop me a message. You can drop me a message on Instagram, and I'm usually pretty responsive on there. But other than that, back in Ireland, back for more podcasts, big things coming in the pipeline. I will have another episode out for you guys next week. So as always, please remember to like it, share it, and send it.